So this session is officially started. Just going to keep an eye out for any latecomers, any newcomers. Show you this. This is in fact a robot that you can build, and you can learn all about robotics at home using this robot. And what you'll notice is it's got a printed circuit board over here with some electronic components on it. It's got a breadboard there. It's got two motors with some wheels, and that's the Primo robot. What you'll see here in this view of this camera is we've got this set of circuit boards, and we break them apart, and these extra pieces make up parts of the robot. So to hold the motors in place, you've got these parts over here like this, and this piece here holds the wheel on the back of the robot. This is an Arduino UNO, and this part has got a microcontroller chip over here, which is used to control the robot. So if I go back to this robot and show you here, you'll see this chip over here is the same as this chip over here. There's two ways of building out this robot. The one way is you can put the parts directly on the red board, or you can leave the parts off here and simply plug in an Arduino on the top of your robot, in which case the robot is called the top deck. What you'll notice is this Arduino UNO has got long pins coming out the bottom. So you might already have an Arduino UNO, but it might not have the long pins coming out the bottom. So this is a very specific Arduino UNO. So if you haven't bought one yet, then you don't want to just rush out and buy anything. What you want to be doing is you want to be getting the correct stuff so you don't end up buying stuff twice. That, in fact, is the motherboard part. Those are the parts that hold the motor, and that's the line sensor on the robot. There we go, that's the right way up, so that's the top of the robot. So what you're looking at here, this is a particular Arduino UNO with long pins out the bottom. So the vast majority of UNOs, you can search them on the internet, there's tons and tons of them out there. Right, folks, so now what you're looking at is the Robot Science webpage. So I'm sure you found this already. If you haven't, there's lots of resources here. You just scroll down there and you can click over here, and it takes you through to robotscience.co.za/robotics101. And if you scroll down here, you'll see it says click for course notes and teaching resources. The Zoom calls that we've already had will in fact appear over here, and so you can watch these videos either here or on YouTube. And here you'll see these are sessions that we've already had. The session that we're doing today is Zoom session 4. So these sessions here are sessions we've already had. This session is actually for newcomers who don't have a robot, who've never programmed anything. And this is just a list of things that we're going to do today. Let's just change this here to a Google search. Google. And if we type in here, Arduino UNO, for those of you who are new to this, Arduino is a very nice robotics controller where you can learn to program in a language called C++, which is a big language in industry, anything to do with mechatronics, industrial automation. So if you do a Google search, you'll see there's 45,900 results. The problem with the majority of all of these UNO boards is most of them don't in fact have pins out the bottom. So you want to make sure you get the correct stuff. What you're welcome to do is you can email me. So here you can see a view underneath of this UNO, and if you enlarge it like that, you'll see there's no long pins coming out the bottom. So this is a very specific UNO, and the reason for the pins that are coming out the bottom of this UNO is what we're going to do today is we're going to mount this UNO onto this board by soldering these parts onto this board. I have got a video online all about soldering. I would urge you to go to robotscience.co.za and find the link to that video. The Prestick is in fact for the purpose of holding these header pins in place. So what we're going to do, because you can see they're flopping around, they're moving around. So what we want to do is we want to put a bit of Prestick to support these header pins on both sides. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to solder these in place, but we're not going to fully solder them in place. We're going to solder them in place, and then we're going to check that they are straight, and then we're going to complete the job. And that's how you have to work with electronics. Electronics requires fine skills, finger skills, where you need to be basically very cautious in your approach. You need to work slowly, you need to work carefully, and you need lots of practice. So this is a very nice little soldering iron suitable for electronics work. Please watch our video on how to do soldering. So you don't rush down to a department store or your local hardware store. You need to get this particular iron or an iron very similar to this. What I will do is I'll put up some more information at that website, robotscience.co.za. You will also need to get a soldering iron stand, and you'll notice there's a sponge here. And this sponge is quite wet. So it's quite wet with water. And the purpose of that is you have to keep the tip of your soldering iron absolutely spotlessly clean when you are doing soldering. When you're not using the soldering iron, make sure you put it into the stand. Many folks who are new to soldering think that it's a good idea just to crank the soldering iron up to its hottest heat. That's actually not a good idea. You can damage the parts, cause a lot of problems for yourself if you crank it up to the highest heat. What you can do when you switch the soldering iron on at first is you can crank up the temperature to the top, and then what you can do is once the soldering iron is hot enough to do soldering, turn it down, folks. Turn it down to the lowest setting, the green, opposite that little arrow there, because you don't want a soldering iron that's too hot. What we do is we apply the solder into the joint. And make sure that you get these header strips in the correct place before you do the soldering. So you can check, you just hold this Arduino UNO, you hold it there, make sure that it lines up, and you'll see like that, it's lining up, and like this. So soldering is not something that you can really learn, I suppose, by watching videos. Tomorrow afternoon, we're having another special session where we're going to talk about small tools that you will need if you hope to pursue a career in electronics or robotics engineering. Yes, there is theory, and yes, there are books and textbooks, but electronics, robotics, it's a very practical, hands-on thing. So you are going to have to acquire a UNO. You are going to need to acquire this baseboard. This baseboard will eventually be built out into a robot. And once you've built that robot, you'll be able to teach that robot how to do basic machine learning and a bunch of stuff. I'm holding this board and I'm looking to check that these are not on skew. So I've only soldered one pin. You'll see there's lots of pins coming through the board, and I've only soldered one pin because what I can do is I can press with my finger. I can press there, I can press down on that part, and then I can remelt that single joint that I've made. Let's just put a bit of solder onto this iron, and now I can melt that joint like so, and I can push that little black, this is called a single inline pin header, and make sure that it's quite straight on the board. Okay, and then the one next to it, melting that pin, pushing that part onto the board, and checking these two. So I'm melting that pin there. You'll see the soldering iron is now on temperature. It's dialed down to the minimum value, so it's on the coolest setting. It's on the green there, on the coolest setting, and it's working very, very well. If you make the iron too hot, what it does is it actually burns the parts. It burns away the flux in the solder, and it just causes a whole bunch of trouble. What you'll notice is the solder takes a few moments to take. So what I normally tell my students is you must count 1001. So go like this: 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. So if you count like that, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, you'll see the solder takes a moment. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. That gives the solder time to heat up the joint, melt into the joint and all over the joint. And over there, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. And here, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. So we're nearly done there. And then we've got this one here to do. You'll notice there's a lot of other holes on the circuit board. There is a complete video already made that I'm going to put up probably tomorrow. Very high quality, high definition videos available at youtube.com Electronics Africa. Soldering requires skill, it requires patience, and most of all, it requires practice. So I have got a practice circuit. Again, you can find the video at youtube.com Electronics Africa. And now what I can do is I can put this board over here, and I'm putting this thing over here and there. And this UNO is now mounted to the baseboard. And the main reason why we want to, early on in the process, why we want to mount this UNO onto this baseboard is because it does have these long pins. They can get damaged if we just simply have this circuit on our table, on our workbench. Those pins can get buckled and bent. So now what I'm going to do is I've got these feet here. These are rubber feet with a little sticky pad. If you don't have these little rubber feet, you can use a ball of Prestick, but I'm just putting these little feet on the underneath of this board, and that's a temporary measure because they'll probably have to come off later on when we turn this whole thing that I'm working with into a robot. These might get in the way, so they'll come off again. But at least for the time being, this lifts the board off. If you've got something metallic, it lifts the board up a bit so that you won't get short circuits, which can damage electronics. So now what we've got is we've got an UNO mounted to a baseboard, and in this area here, I'm going to show you in another Zoom session how we can put a breadboard. Now a breadboard is like this item over here, and what the breadboard's function is you can build little temporary circuits on the breadboard over there. So what I'm going to do now, because we've got about 10 minutes left of this session, you will see this is a USB printer cable, and I'm going to plug this USB printer cable in over here. And what you will see is on the other side of it is a normal USB cable that I'm going to plug into my computer. You're looking at my main computer screen now. I'm looking for the Arduino icon. So you click on that. You can download the Arduino software free. So there is the Arduino software. This is basically where we learn how to program. Now, if we go to File over there, well, let's first go to Preferences and enlarge the code. So we go to Preferences, we click on that. Let's go to, say, 22, That's just going to increase the font size to help you all to see what's going on here. Now, if we go to File, and we go to Examples, and we go to Basics, and we go to Blink, these are inbuilt programs, pre-programmed, pre-written, and what you'll see here is there's a bit of an explanation of what this program does is it'll blink the LED on the board. So over here, you'll see we've got an LED on 13 that we can blink at a specific rate. You need to basically locate the board. So you need to look at port, and you'll see that it's found that Arduino UNO on COM10, but there's no arrow there. So we click there. Now when we go back here to port, you'll see there's a check mark. The next thing you need to do so that we don't get errors when we try to download this to the robot is we need to basically make sure that the board type is selected. You could select any one of these many Arduino boards over here, but we actually want to select the UNO. Once we've got the port selected and the board type selected, we could verify that the code doesn't have errors. Now, this is one of the Arduino codes, so it doesn't have errors. And then when we click on this, it'll actually upload the code to the board. What's happening here is you'll see down at the bottom here, it says done uploading. If we stop sharing this screen and we go back and look at the board, you'll see that LED there is blinking at a certain rate. It's blinking slowly. So now you can see what I'm looking at. So you'll see there's void setup over here and there's void loop over there. Those are the two minimum parts required in an Arduino program. Over here, you'll see it says delay 1000. So let's change that to delay 222. By the way, that's milliseconds. So 500 milliseconds is half a second. So 222 is easy on the keyboard. I don't have to look around for the 0. And when I re-download this to the UNO, there's a bit of a time lag in this Zoom calling system. So you can't really see, due to the frame rate and everything else, you can't really see. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go the other way. That high means on, so that's when the LED is switched on. So let's make the LED on for half a second, and let's keep it off for 2 seconds. Let's download that to the robot. Because I slowed this whole thing down to suit the Zoom environment, what you will see is that this LED goes on for a short duration and off for a long duration.